Have you ever guys heard of El Cadejo?
No, I haven't heard Cadejo, but we have a guest today, Primos, by the way. Welcome to
Yeah,
my
the
Primos
probably has.
podcast. ¿Qué ondas, Primos y Primas? My name is Freddie, and this, of course, is my Primos podcast. Walter took the reins today, so it threw me off from my game. But we do have a special guest today. We're going to discuss El Cadejo, Siwanava, a lot of Salvadorian folklore, on top of, just great conversation. I'm really excited for our guest today. We have Randy Ertll. Is that how you pronounce your last name, Randy?
Yeah, it's Randy Jurado Ertll.
Ertl.
Tengo dos apellidos. I have two.
Randy Jurado Ertll. Well, we have esteemed author Randy Jurado Ertll. Thank you so much for joining us today here on the show. And I would like for you to just simply say hello to our listeners, kind of give a quick intro to our listeners who don't know who Randy is.
Okay, yeah, gracias. Thank you, Walter y Freddy from my Primos podcast. I'm an author. I write nonfiction and fiction books and illustrated books too. So my goal is to promote our culture and for more people to know about our history, our politics, and I throw in some folklore and legends with surrealism. So it's kind of like similar to Black Panther, pero a los Salvi, a los Centroamericanos.
Nice.
So yeah, so that I'm trying to create superheroes for our community.
That's awesome.
So that people, yeah. So yeah, and I really appreciate that you invited me to be on your podcast because it's something new for me. This is like yesterday by coincidence they turned like I mentioned a Zoom interview into a podcast, but I had never done like a actual podcast. And this is pretty much my first
Number two. This is number two.
Number two, because you did one. You did one. So
Yeah, you did it. Yeah.
don't worry, man. It's gonna go great. It's always easier the next time, and the next time, and
Yeah.
the next time. So this will
Yeah, but
start
it
you on
gets
that
better.
process.
It gets better.
Yeah, and you know what's fun about podcasts when you first get involved with one or a guest or just kind of fall into it, you start realizing, man, maybe I can do one. So you never know, man. That could be an avenue for you. And
So everybody has a
story.
podcast
Everybody has a phone, and honestly, all you need is a phone to record and put on the internet nowadays. So we don't hide the fact that we put this together one night and say let's run with it, and 2 years later here we are still doing it. It's been a blast, and I'm glad we.
But like Freddie, yeah. But like Freddie was saying, everybody has a podcast these days, but everyone has a voice and a story to tell. Much like my dad was yesterday, and that's why I was excited to have you on. And kind of coincidentally, my dad started telling stories about La Siwanava, El Cadejo. He just told those two. Oh, y un padre sin cabeza or something like that. That my uncle came across. So, anyways, it kind of coincidentally.
It does coincide with what Randy is talking about, right? But the reason being is that Randy, you've written a number of books. So let's kind of put that out there. Your body of work is great. I mean, you've gone from, I looked your stuff up, and so I know you've written roughly books about Salvadorian experience in America, and I would love to hear a little bit of your story. Talk about, your universe you're building. Can you talk to us about, where you grew up, how your upbringing was, and what kind of led to your profession?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, these are like my different books here. The Hope in Times of Darkness, a Salvadoran American experience. Then I did it in Spanish, Esperanza en tiempos de oscuridad, La experiencia de un salvadoreño americano. Then I did The Life of an Activist. And then I'm showing it to you here, but but and then in the Struggle Chronicles and The Life and Times of El Cipitillo, La vida y los tiempos del Cipitillo. Y después hice El Ilustrado, The Adventures of El Cipitillo. And then this is the latest one, La Siwanava. So,
Pero la Siwanava, ¿qué?
La Siwanava, ¿qué?
Y el...
Oh, sí, and the magical Loroco.
Yeah, the Loroco is magical, everybody. And the pupusa con Loroco, Loroco con huevos, the Loroco is magical.
Yes, y pues poderes, eso es uno de sus superpoderes. That's one of her superpowers, like the Loroco.
Oh.
She has the pupusa rank too. Igual como parece con su lazo. Ajá, pero So I grew up, Los Angeles. I was born in LA, pero mi mamá, she got deported in the 70s, and I got deported too with her to El Salvador. So I grew up there till I was 5. And that's why the culture is really in me. Porque people probably wonder, hey man, if you were born here, so why do you care so much about that little country?
No,
And I'm like, well, because that's where I spent my childhood, and that's where I learned, I would say, my language and about culture. And then when I returned, yo tuve la experiencia, similar to most Salvadoreños, which is to move to the tough areas. A lot of people don't know our stories because usually we were not included in stories or in major newspapers or documentaries. In the 70s or 80s, it was always about just the Civil War.
Yeah,
that's what
it's extreme violence, right? Extreme violence.
It's always violence, MS-13, and that's it.
Yeah, and then I think it's good to acknowledge that and say it's part of our history. But we need to start also talking about other issues, and that's why when I came back, I had to learn English. So then, like in 2008, 2009, I was like, man, there's no books about us or like about Salvadoran Americans in English first, and then in Spanish, because there's a lot. I mean, in Spanish, of course, there's a lot of writers of Salvador. Pero como aquí en Estados Unidos, it's rare. I mean, it's really a void, and in a way there's reasons for it, because we haven't been empowered. They don't include books about us in the public schools.
And like I mean, just to kind of because I like I want to hear your story, but I ask a lot of questions because your story is kind of similar to my story, is kind of similar to yours in a little bit. I actually moved out there when I was 9, and then came back when I was, and the plan was my dad wanted to move the whole family there, and then we ended up coming back in 98 when I was about 13, 14. So so then when you left, did you know English, or at what age did you leave?
I was a baby. I was like 9 months old. So no, I didn't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't speak. Yeah. That's why I learned Spanish over there. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then when you came back at the age, or what, you came back when you were
5 years old.
Oh damn! So you were really young then. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So but I think that's what gave me the insight about the home country.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, yeah, and it's true, because like I said, like Stanley didn't live over there, but he's very Salvadoreño and everything in every way, right? But como que pues viviendo allá, el acento, el hablado, los dichos, la comida, todo como que se lo trae uno, right? And to me, living over there was like 4 years only. But when I tell people here that I lived 4 years over there, I don't know if you had this experience, they make it sound like you did time, like you were in jail or something, or your parents made you suffer when you when you were over there, right? But for me, I was like, I had an amazing fucking time, So I don't know if have you ever gotten that type of an feedback from anybody?
No, it's because through time I've learned different perceptions. And my friend, who's a reporter, he kind of gave me a little bit of insight. And he said that in El Salvador, they look down upon los salvadoreños that get deported. And you know what? That was like, damn, that was like an eye-opener, ¿verdad? Porque you would think that our people wouldn't be like that. But it's interesting to be aware of that. So they think that like you're kind of like a failure,
Oh, you got caught. Deported.
Yeah, you got caught, or like if it's like a criminal thing. And I think that it's really interesting, because during the war, if you left the country, like the military or the guerrillas would see you as kind of like a traitor, oh, you're not staying to fight with us, you're leaving.
Wow.
And then okay. So there is a disconnect and a dislike that people don't really talk about, because in El Salvador, it's similar to the Chicanos versus the Mexican nationals. That the Chicanos think they're better than the Mexican immigrants, and then when the Chicanos go to Mexico, the Mexican nationals think that they're they're like Americanized. Y que están, son muchos. So in El Salvador, there's a little bit of that, but people don't really talk about it because it's
and this is how did they know that you got deported? Because como cuando yo me fui,
la gente
like,
habla,
yo me acuerdo que jugaba
la gente habla.
No, por eso, pero me acuerdo, I guess, porque cuando yo me fui para allá y estaba viendo una escuela católica en Hilo Vasco, Cabañas, la del Niño Jesús, you know, and everything over there in Hilo Vasco, and I would play in soccer, me jugaba en equipos de fútbol y mi carnet decía Estados you know, so everybody would be like, es jugador extranjero, que no sé qué chingadas, ¿sí? So if anything, I didn't have a negative experience in that aspect, but you know how I did have a negative experience? It was because all the kids thought that because I was from the US, I was soft. Like I was really soft and they could beat me up or take away my money. Fuck no, I beat up every motherfucker there. And as I beat him up, I became friends. It was like a plea type thing. You know, I would beat up every person that would end up being my friend actually. And then había un muchacho que se llamaba Walter también, and he's the only one I didn't fight. Y era de Estados Unidos. Coincidentally, like you, he came se fue para Salvador bien pequeño, bien chiquito, pero el cabrón era bien alto. He was like a gentle giant. So he's the only guy I didn't fight. But that's what I'm saying. Like, so then how did they find out you got deported, or like how does that come out? You know?
Okay, no, that's a good point. No, I'm talking about more like now, like later in my adult life.
Okay.
Okay.
Mix more like because when I was over there and I arrived, I was like como una novedad, como así como puchica,
exactly.
De Estados Unidos. Así que it was positive, but I was little. I was a baby.
Okay.
But people were curious. They would come from all over del departamento y hasta de otros departamentos to see me, because they had never seen. This is the 70s. No habían visto estadounidense o guanacos americanos. So they were like, damn, this dude is like, it's like como un extraterrestre, you know? Because
you were like the Avatar, the Airbender. He was trying to go look at you.
No, but I think that if I could, is like if I can connect with you in a way, because with me, I was born, you know, in the U.S. and my parents, they came, you know, like most Salvadoreños, families fled for the war and came and reestablished themselves in the U.S. in L.A. right in South Central, all that, like you said, the tough neighborhoods, the tough everything. But the way I grew up, I never felt any animosity, right, within the kids that I grew up with. Pero cuando íbamos de regreso a El Salvador como de visita, ahí, como dice Walter, decían, como llegaba gente a visitar porque sabían que ibas a llegar, right? Pero cuando llegaban, se me pegaban, because they're like, pues, puede que tenga dinero, o hablame de Estados Unidos, ¿qué hay allá en el norte? Like, it was like a whole adventure.
God,
like, talk to me about, like, ¿qué hay allá? ¿Qué hay aquí? ¿Qué comes? Like, it was a whole different world, because la realidad es que, bueno, nosotros estamos en El Salvador, mucha pobreza, right? Y el país es pobre, la mayoría. Y en los lugares nosotros vivimos todavía, mucha pobreza. So, me imagino que they just saw somebody come from the U.S. and they wanted to immediately kind of go, hey, man, help me. Porque si, mira, te cuento una historia. Mi papá llegó una vez con nosotros, ¿va? Y de repente una señora llegó a tocar la puerta de la casa de mi abuelito. Preguntando por mi papá. Ni conocía a esta persona. Okay, nomás llegó a tocar la puerta y dice, mira que Freddy, soy esposa de tal persona que está allá en los Estados Unidos, pero ocupo ayuda, me puede dar algo de dinero. Like, my dad doesn't know who this person is, but they know who he is. And they're saying, cuando regreses para allá, te devuelven tu dinero, blah, blah. Like, there's a need.
What?
Yeah, like people just know. Eso te digo, la gente habla.
Western Union. Western Union.
But it's a trip because the countries were poor. But my experience was a little different because I never got any animosity from people that I grew up with, other fellow, first, I would say second generation. That's how we call it. We call second generation because our parents that came over are that first generation that really led the way for us. So we consider them the first. I never had any animosity with the fellow kids growing up, but I did, como dice Walter, have that bounce on people that came over. So let's say llegó un muchacho recién llegado, tiene mi edad, o como dice Walter, I'm soft. I haven't suffered. Yo no he sufrido como ha sufrido.
Yeah.
And then I'm not Salvadorian enough. So you say I'm Salvadorian, but you're not Salvadorian enough. You're light skinned. You don't talk the same version of Espanol que nosotros. It's a little different. And I mean, Randy, you came when you were like 5, 6 years old. Did you get any bounce back like that?
Well, like, you mean here in the U.S.?
In the U.S., yeah, from Salvadoreños?
Yeah, I think I talk funny, like in elementary school, because most of my classmates in South Central were, like, of course, Mexican American, Mexican, and black, mainly black. And then the Mexican kids, they were like, man, why you talk so funny? Oh, can you talk to us, please? Because they wanted to hear me, because the girls actually liked it, porque it was kind of unique, you know?
Yeah. That's new for me. I didn't know that. I haven't heard that.
That was elementary school.
Yeah.
And a lot of the kids were like Salvies or half, maybe. It was starting to happen, but they were undercover. They wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
We started to invade these neighborhoods or these communities.
Invade, slowly take over, marry into their men and their women. Right?
And it's a reality now. Now it's like in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. Now you have, I'm not kidding, you have, I would say tens of thousands or more, because no one has done like the. Hopefully, the census will show us.
We'll shed light more on that, huh?
Yeah, and we're mixed now. We're like mixed in terms of like, because it's been 2, 3 decades, 4 decades now. So now we're half Salvis, half black, half Guate, half Salvi, half Salvi Mex. So we're like not even full Salvadoreños anymore, because we mix into the different communities where we moved in.
Yeah, because I imagine, because even in LA, in LA, there's a really big concentration of Salvadoreños in the Korean, right, in Koreatown, right? That's where you can go find pupusas and Korean food like next to each other by a Korean barbecue, right? Like there's a big concentration there.
Because Koreatown is just called that, right? It's all politics, but it's a Salvadoran town, really. So that's what's funny about it, because they want to put us in the MacArthur Park, because we're not even there. We're like not the majority there. We've never been. I mean, you hardly find any Salvies there.
Where's the Salvadorian corridor that I saw? Like, where is that now?
Yeah. Para ir a comprar donde están los pitos y los mangos y los jocotes y todo eso. Y el alguaste.
Sí, es que lo que pasa es que muchas veces they don't do the demographic research. So, a la brava lo hacen, right? Dicen, puchica, puta, aquí vamos a poner el sign y aquí es el corredor salvadoreño. Nosotros los salvadoreños, we're everywhere. That's what people don't want to accept, that we're like everywhere. But they want to stereotype us that we're only in MacArthur Park and Pico Union. I'm like, I'm tired of that, because that would be like saying that all the Chinese are in Chinatown.
Yeah, that's true. No, you're right. But do you think it's methodical? Do you think it is so political? They're like, let me keep you Salvadorians here. I want you here. That's where I want you. I'm labeling it to keep you here.
Yeah, yes, there is. There's reasons for it. Like the Chicano politicians during the 1992 riot, they blamed the Salvadoreños for burning the community.
What? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they come on live.
I didn't know that.
Because they said, look at us. They said, look at East LA. Look at those crazy Central Americans. They come from.
Wow.
Shoot. I mean, our uncle did, go get some TV dinners before the store burned down. But I didn't know the Salvadoreño community was getting blamed.
I mean, it makes sense because we're in that neighborhood, right? We're in that neighborhood, and so why not point the finger? I guess.
Yeah, it's an easy scapegoat, because we didn't have, and we still don't have, like,
representation,
representatives to speak and to be interviewed, because usually they go to the city council member or the state assembly member or the congressional member to speak about issues, but then we don't have any, so they speak for us and they make up anything about us. But there was this professor, Manuel Pastor, at Occidental College, who did a study right after the riots, the 92 riots, and they did a survey, like a real professional empirical evidence survey, and that's what they found. They said, man, they interviewed and thousands, tens of thousands of people, and then what they found, which is hilarious, is that only 1 out of 10 people out of the just was Salvadoreño in that area, in the Pico Union, Westlake area. So we have moved out already because that's an immigrant landing place. People land there and then they move out. So then we move everywhere. We move to the valley. We move to Southeast LA, Long Beach, San Pedro, Santa Ana, and Orange County. So then, but then the myth stayed that we're the majority there. But it's really one of the most high crime areas and high poverty areas. So it's beneficial for politicians to say that we're there, and also nonprofits claim that too. But the demographics don't reflect it. Like, and if you
so can I ask, like, what do you mind? What? How old are you?
Ya estoy anciano.
No, because I mean, I'm 35. I'm 34. I'm gonna be 35 myself.
Estoy llenando ya el Social Security.
That's too. There you go, man. So you're a high risk for COVID. Then you're one of those high risk individuals that we gotta keep you safe.
No, I'm like, yo soy como el cipitío, soy como el cipitío, soy eterno.
Eternal.
Yeah. Hey, so then you're older. How much older than us are you? I'm 35. My cousin's like 36.
I'm a decade older. I'm in my 40s.
So okay, so that's why. That's what the reason I wanted to ask that is because it feels that you're it's dope. You're telling us stories that are in between us and our parents. Because there's a lot of stuff that we don't know because we were too little to know at the time. But then there's stuff that our parents don't tell us. Kind of it gets lost. I don't know. I am enjoying because you're older, so you were able to kind of live through that and stuff that we don't remember. At least myself, because I was way too young to kind of recollect that type of stuff. So.
Yeah, that's what I try to do in my books, in my literature, is to capture that because our stories weren't told. So what I'm trying to do is rescue them and memorialize them, make them available forever. Because I piss off people, believe it or not. I get people upset because they want to believe the myths about us. There's a lot of myths or stereotypes. Yeah. And they like to believe them because.
So what are the myths that you're getting from people? Is it from Salvadoreño community or is it from other communities?
I think both. I think it's external and internal. I think from the external one is that they want us to look a certain way or to act a certain way, and to be affiliated, with gangs. They want that, and then they want the Civil War stories, and the Civil War and the gang stories. I think that's what people are used to, because the mainstream media, that's what they've been obsessed with, and that's what sells, right? Violence sells. But then no solutions. And then from our community, some people have actually believed the myths, like the demographic myths, that we're only in one community, and we don't fit in those areas because we're millions, and we're like 2-3 million people. We can't be in one area. We're like everywhere. We're not just in LA too. We're in Houston, we're in DC, in Maryland,
Virginia,
Florida, throughout Texas. So we're like everywhere. We're starting to even invade southern U.S. Like Georgia, Alabama. We're the farm workers.
I like how you say. I like how you say invade.
Yeah, because that's how they see us. They see us as invaders. Yeah. But what's ironic and contradictory to that is that we've been here since the 1500s, because migration hasn't stopped. So we've been here, and I'm writing about stuff like that, about history that's never been told or known, because I'm trying to get people to think. Because, I mean, I'm not kidding. I mean, like, they think that we just got here in the 80s.
Yeah.
But we've been here like forever. In San Francisco, in you have Salvadoreños that have been there hundreds of years. They're not even Salvadoreños anymore. They're like American.
Yeah, at this point.
So it's like, it's funny.
And you know what? That's a very good thing, because I was actually like and because like I said, my parents are living with me now, and all of a sudden we start talking about stuff that we haven't talked about in a long time. And last time I was asking him about this young guy that used to live with us. My dad was helping him out when he got here, and I was asking him about how he got here, who was here before him, and blah 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 blah. And from his recollection up until he knew somebody that had been here since the 70s, you know. And but then after that, that person trajo más gente, or they came looking for him, and blah blah. So then, yeah, it's I'm enjoying our conversation in that aspect. We're getting a little more information than what even our parents are able to kind of tell anecdotally, you know.
Well, Randy, and I ask you this question because it kind of touches what Walter just said. You know, our parents, and my mother example I use all the time, she's very much of the school of, I don't want to talk about the war anymore. You know, she's very much like, I when we ask her about that stuff, she's like, almost como que más ya se enfadó. She's like, that's everything that's the only thing people want to talk about is the war. And she had a connection to the guerrilla and things like that. So she's very much like, would be a great, como tú dices, a very sellable story. It'd be a very sellable story for someone to want to read the book or watch the movie, right? But is it because, like, the trauma? I mean, is it, or what is it? Like, what is it about that time that people are just kind of sick of it?
You know, that's a good point, and I think it's an evolution of things, and it's a mixture of things. I think that the activists are obsessed with it, right? Especially the FMLN members, and they se quedaron en los 80s,
yeah,
de la Guerra Fría.
Oh, okay.
And then the new generation, they've been taught that too, because when we're young and we go to college or university, we want to be revolutionaries. So that's why a lot of Salvis are very pro-leftist. But the reality is that since Mauricio Funes got elected, and then Salvador Sanchez Seren got elected from the FMLN, Mauricio Funes stole over $300 million. So they betrayed the whole
movement. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that la gente se dio cuenta de que they got used to fight on both sides.
No, yeah, and just to echo that, like my dad, you know, my dad used to, but he was in the military, and he told me that one time I guess le cayó, he kind of saved this top general, he kind of saved his life in while they were training or something like that, and then the guy como que tomó cariño, and he would request my dad as a driver to drive him around. And they said that one time he had to take him somewhere, and this is stories that my dad has told me, and he said that they got somewhere, and they told my dad, hey, don't talk about anything you saw here, okay, if you know what's good for you, pretty much. And he said that they went into this like mansion hotel type place, and some of the top generals were there, some of the top guerrilla were there with a bunch of prostitutes, and most of the prostitutes were like American, like they talked English. So my dad was like, anytime my dad would talk about El Salvador or see the United States going and fighting other wars, he would tell us, you're not, or like when 9/11 happened, he was like, you're not joining the army, fuck that, like you're gonna go waste your life, and at the end of the day, they're both just selling guns to both sides, you know. So that's kind of a big disillusionment also, that because that's the reality of what really happened, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what happened to both sides, that they saw that they just got used by the politicians over there, and the wealthy people, they just left. You know, they went to Miami and other countries, but then they went back once the war was over. But the country was destroyed, and I think it's a lot of bad memories, because it was a very dirty war. You know, the Civil War. Any war is bad, but in El Salvador, for some reason, it stands out for the atrocities and the extreme human rights violations. Because I'm telling you, I learned stuff from other people too. And my friend one time posed a question to me. He threw it back at me, and he said, "What country in the world has ever had death squads? Which is the country that created death squads?" which is the country, and this is my own questions that I throw at people.
Yeah.
Which is the country that has killed their own archbishop? Which is the country that has killed their own Jesuit priests? Which are the country that has raped and killed the nuns? Which is the country that has done all this unimaginable things, you know? And I think that's why people don't want to talk about it, because it's very traumatizing to remember the unjustified tortures and murders. And the country wasn't bad, actually, before the Civil War. It was actually progressing. And I think these young people that were the leaders, they were irresponsible. They thought it was fun, you know, to blow up things.
No, but wasn't there a reason for them to try and start a revolution? Didn't, at least even though it might have been ideological, wasn't El Salvador already like a tipo banana republic where, you know, you just had big American corporations, you know, like they owned whole fucking countries, you know, like.
Yeah, you know, there's reasons, and they can be justified. It's just that they didn't go in the direction that they were supposed to, like in terms of equity and actually finding people jobs and reducing poverty. It actually made it worse. And then the leaders became corrupt. A lot of the leaders.
That happens all the time. Like right now in Nicaragua, right? The same things happen in Nicaragua. This like very prominent figure that helped the Sandinistas, right? Came back, and now he doesn't want to let go of power, right? And he's being a fucking. I have friends that I talk to about. Well, Mikey, right? We've had Mikey on to talk about what's happening there, and it's similar. They fucked it up, you know, like whoever started, you know, the.
You know, it's it's and I'm sorry to cut you both off there, Randy. You know, it's fascinating. You know, when you start hearing your stories being told from a perspective other than what your mom or dad always told you, right? And the thing with Salvadoreños, at least in my age bracket or younger, like, and I think we're in a very special block of time, okay? Because like Walter says it, you know, you're the decade ahead of us, right? When it comes to age. So your experience is a little different than us. You're the precursor to what we had to go through and whatnot, right? You kind of your parents were the spear, and we're in the shaft, and then the tail end of it, we don't know where it ends. But like the younger Central American community, especially nowadays with the internet and social media and all that,
very proud,
super proud. Like, and I make fun of it with Walter sometimes. And my wife's Mexican, and we'll have conversations between Salvadoreño and Mexicano, and she'll tell me like, you're not like a super Salvadorian. And I go like, what do you mean? Is it like, I don't see you with the Salvadorian flag waving it against the wall. I don't see you with the corbo. Like, I don't see you like this. And I go, well, like,
I mean, I do have machetes as I do have machetes, picardillas, all types of stuff hanging, but I don't go out on the street with the flag, you know. I don't. But yeah, you're right. Like, there's more of that.
There's a big difference in that. Is it because our culture has been so covered in that veil of like, Salvador is poor, war-ridden, violent country, and
I mean, it's also kind of survival, you know, survival. I mean, like, you want to come into a predominantly Mexican community, and you don't want to ruffle feathers, you know.
Like, I think all of us here on the show, and maybe those that do know enough, and I urge you, like Randy, I mean, definitely you'll provide us with information, but urge you to go start doing your own research, start reading up on more than just this fantastical stuff, because I make a joke, I think years ago on the show, a couple in the beginning, where if you Google famous Salvadorian people or famous Salvadorians, you see the priest that got killed during the Civil War and, you know, some singer or something. There's nothing there beyond violence, you know? And so the fact that we are trying to make space for ourselves at this point, 2020, it feels like it's almost the beginning of there's going to be a bubble that bursts. Like, there's something that's going to happen soon. What do you think, Randy?
Yeah, you know, I think in El Salvador, I got into an argument with my friend in high school. He was Mexican from East LA, and because we went to high school in Rochester, Minnesota on this scholarship, and he was saying that El Salvador was poor, and I was like, no, it's not. And I think I was coming about it in a different perspective, because it's like really no country is poor. It's more like how the leaders exploit the country. Like,
because we have resources, right? Each one of the Central American countries has, to a certain extent, they call it the curse of having resources, right?
yeah, no, they do have them. It's just that the land and the people get exploited. Like, for example, in El
Mm-hmm.
Salvador, they've always had the campesinos working the land to pick coffee and cotton that gets exported. We get the best coffee in the U.S. and in other countries from El Salvador, and other things too. Now the biggest export del Salvador is its people, es nuestra gente. Y el PIB, Bukele has brought a lot of hope, and I think that COVID-19 has messed it up for him and everyone else, right? But I think he represents like the new leadership of El Salvador, and hopefully we'll get leaders like that in the future, that won't steal the money, that would actually build schools and hospitals so that people won't have to come here. And then, just going back to the whole violence, the history of violence, aquí en la novela, pues, The Life and Times of El Cipitío, the way I created the character is que El Cipitío is a little colonel in the military allá en El Salvador, and he's a desk squad member, and that's where he learns the violence. And he got trained by the U.S. And then his brother,
Oh shit! Yeah, like everything else. Yeah.
El Duende es el guerrillero, and he's el comando urbano. And one joins one gang and the other one joins another gang. And I do talk about that because we can't deny it either. It's not like we're denying it. We're not denying like the issues of the Civil War and about gangs, because I think that one led to the other, right? The whole war created a lot of displaced people and a lot of people who were trained to be violent, and a lot of and see, I'm trying to also counter the myth that it was kids too. It wasn't just kids; it was really adults setting the example, and they're the ones that actually did a lot of the damage. It wasn't innocent kids; it was more like adults. And I think that we have to turn it around. I used to go along with that too. I used to buy into that. Oh yeah, que eran los niños, los hipotes. No, los adultos les enseñaron, y los maltrataban. Como muchas veces cuando venían los niños aquí, they were kind of like orphans, really. Y puchica, los vergueaban, los explotaban, los tenían como sirvientes.
Yeah.
Y así que a lot of these kids had a lot of hatred. Grew up with a lot of hatred and a lot of violence. And then that's why we saw the results. We saw the results, but then we can't continue with that story because those kids aren't kids anymore. They're old. Ya están viejos. Así que now the new generation, I think, is trying to replicate that, and that's because they don't include any literature or books that talk about our reality and offering alternatives or solutions.
I want to talk about your books because it goes hand in hand with what you're just saying. I do want to talk about your books because you hit a real good point there. Yeah, no, it's cool. So thank you. I think it's important because we haven't been given the platforms.
Yeah.
To speak our mind.
So yeah. So we're coming back. Took a little break, get a drink. By the way, Randy, have you ever seen these?
Oh, I can't see because I have that tiny screen, pero ¿qué es? I could barely see it.
Picardías.
Sí, yeah. ¿Cómo se llama? Ya se me olvidó where they make them. That little town.
Hilo Vasco.
Yeah,
Hilo Vasco Cabañas. That's where I spent time in El Salvador. That's where my dad's from. My grandpa used to make ladrillo. Hacía ladrillo. Tenía una ladrillera. Tenía molino. Sembraba maíz. Teníamos un poquito de café también. Like, I grew up doing all that shit.
Where in El Salvador is your family from, or where are you from, Randy?
Okay, cuando la gente me pregunta, yo les digo de qué parte de El Salvador soy, yo les digo de Los Ángeles.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Pero yo tengo familia de todas partes, de Santa Ana, San Salvador, Usulután. So I represent the whole little country.
There you go, man. That's a good one. I'm gonna use that. De Los Ángeles.
No, and that's interesting actually, porque cuando a uno le preguntan exactamente de dónde eres, like the country is so small that you have family all throughout the country, like en la capital, en Oriente, así, en el occidente, oriente, así, siempre tiene uno familia donde quiera porque el país está tan chiquito y cuando ya, me acuerdo que cuando empecé a ir a la escuela aquí, que regresé de El Salvador, una cosa que that felt it amazed me was that I looked up like how big Connecticut was, Connecticut is like one of the smallest states here in the United States, y lo comparé con El Salvador because almost the same fucking size, like it's really small, like it's a very small country with a lot of baggage, right? So
no, well,
yeah,
I wanted, before our break, I mentioned about your stories. You gave us a little bit of your youth, you coming up, dealing with with LA, at least during the time, and we walked through that long walk regarding El Salvador, which I loved it because we don't hear that version of it. Like you said, there's not a lot out there that can really give it its dues. There's not. No hay nada ahí que, if it's not the war, extreme violence, or some fantastical imagery of it, beyond what really happened or what the other alternative is. You are writing stories, or writing, you're in numerous books. What you're working right now currently, I know we're going to talk about La Ciguanaba, and I want to talk about it feels like they're all interconnected. You have your Cipitillos, Aventuras de Cipitillo, and you're going into La Ciguanaba, and I read the description for the most recent book, and I really want you to give us a quick little just snapshot of what this book is about. And I want to jump off from there and how we're interpreting our stories moving forward.
Yes, okay, the Cipitillo is the first part, the novel, the life and times of El Cipitillo, La vida y los tiempos del Cipitillo. And then I did the second part of the novel. I did the illustrated one. This is for the kids, because like a lot of the festivals, the kids were like, damn, I want to read a book, or quiero un libro. Y por eso es el ilustrado, que tiene ilustraciones para niños, para adultos también. And then, but the novels are more for young adults. Y La Ciguanaba and the Magical Oroco, I wanted to create a female superhero. So then I made La Ciguanaba into this badass woman que no se deja. She'll like kick your ass. She'll like cut off your penis.
The fuck? What? Go again? Like shit. That sounds dope, man. Fuck the lasso of truth, dog. Let me just cut your penis off.
La kuma de verdad.
La kuma con la kuma.
He quiere revenge.
Yeah.
And I included pues el Cipitillo,
we all deserve it.
El duende y el cadejo, ¿verdad? And then she becomes the first female priest and then first female pope in the world. So that's why she has aquí esta cosa.
Yeah.
Así que ella representa the struggle of Salvadoran women, but also the possibilities of becoming the first female pope. And then why not?
Awesome, man.
Tio made him into the first Latino indigenous U.S. president. And then it's possible.
That's fucking...
the first female pope. And then people may think I'm sinning, you know, I'm being sinful.
Oh yeah.
I can imagine.
I've heard it's como blasphemy type thing, right? Like that's kind of what they're. Because I mean, I personally I'm not no soy religioso, no creo en Dios, casi como lo representan en la Biblia y todo eso. I kind of walked away from that, but en El Salvador sí me criaron bien católico. Mi abuelita me llevaba a la iglesia, you know, todo, like I did the whole thing. So, but at the same time, la familia de mi mamá eran como evangélicos, you know? So, your background is Catholic, I guess, I'm assuming, or?
You know, yeah, I have different backgrounds. I'm ecumenical. I believe in all religions and in one God. It's because I think if we go way back, we all have Jewish, Muslim, Christian roots, and we do. Like, believe me,
yeah.
we there's different explanations, and even Spain was conquered by the Muslims, so we have Muslim background. Jewish too. The Jews have always been in Spain, and a lot of Jews, Muslims went to El Salvador. They're still there.
Los Ladinos, yeah, like they came into era Jewish people from Spain, I believe, right?
Yes, que los expulsaron because of the Inquisition. Yeah. So like we're mixed, so that's why I relate to all religions, and I felt conscious, believe me, when I wrote this, porque yo sé que it was going to be like, oh my God, es malcriada también, porque, you know, speaks.
But like you said earlier, right, I like it. You know, I'm a believer. I have my beliefs as well. But I like it because you're putting it on its head where it needs to be. You're why not have an interpretation of this, show how powerful this female figure is, to take on a pundit, if you would, right? That's typically for only men. And it's like the Catholic Church, man, it's for all intents and purposes, and I apologize to anybody out there, it's an institution that has its problems.
At the end of the day,
period. It's a building, all right? I mean, it is what it is. If you believe in God, and trust me, a building's not going to incorporate that to a God, okay? So let's just put that out there. So the fact that you took this character that is lesser known, because everybody knows La Llorona, right? Oh, La Llorona, ooh, whatever. Which, hey, no disrespect, but I'm saying I've seen it, I understand it, it's so well known, it's out there. Then you come in with La Ciguanaba.
I mean, it's in the name, like La Llorona. Cuando es La Llorona, you know, right? It's like kind of self-descriptive, but Ciguanaba, it's like, what does Ciguanaba mean anyways?
Do you, Randy, when you wrote this universe, this, what would you call it? Like mystic Salvi universe kind of thing? I mean, because it feels like they're all interconnected, right? And they're all, you're telling the same kind of story. So I'm assuming they're all in the same thing. Me, I attribute it to like Macondo, right? For Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Like in Macondo, they're all connected. It's magical. It's wonderful. They're all interconnected in some way in all his books, right? So is this the same thing for you? Is this kind of, they're all interconnected in the story you're telling?
You know, they're all interconnected, and it's through surrealism, porque ese es el estilo that I've adopted, el surrealismo, where I mix like fantasy with reality. So that's what's unique about it. It's just that it's Central American, and that's how it just evolved. It came to me like naturally, like because when I started writing music to you, I'm not kidding. I just wanted to challenge myself to write fiction, because I've written nonfiction only before that. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try fiction, and then yo no sabía really how it was gonna turn out, and I really did put a lot of passion in it, and then it came out all right. It came out, because at first you don't know, because you're like, damn, es como cuando haces como huevo revuelto.
¿Cómo? The pressure, no, la presión, because the Salvi community is going to see these words and go, who are you to write it? Like, does that happen?
See, nuestra comunidad, they're pretty tough, you know, they are. And yeah, there was some of that. But then, you know, what I realized, como el Día Salvadoreño y otros festivales, was that our people came through and they supported. That's what was cool. I think some people assumed that it was like the same old little paragraph, folklore, leyenda, right? Que es la misma, pues de siempre. Que you could pretty much describe it in one page.
Yeah.
And siempre la misma historia. Y lo que yo quería hacer was to expand it and make it come alive and different. So I had to explain to people. Because mucha gente en nuestra comunidad, la historia ya la conozco. Es como que te digan eso de La Llorona. Yo voy a hacer la historia de La Llorona. O yo voy a hacer la historia de Superman o Batman. ¿Para qué voy a ver la película? Así que yo los tenía que convencer. Porque our people are pretty savvy, you know, they're entrepreneurial. And the thing is that en El Salvador, no han inculcado la cosa de los libros. Siempre los libros es lo menos que han promovido en El Salvador.
Como el arte en términos de literatura.
Sí, es que quieren que más que todo compremos como en Estados Unidos y El Salvador.
Yes. I get you.
Read and tic-tac, you know, like para estar todo pichinga, vaya. Pero like, I think that literature it's sort of like the last thing that they want, because they don't want people to be literate or knowledgeable. Because like you can pretty much manipulate a community or a whole population that doesn't read, because then they'll believe the conspiracy theories. Then they'll believe.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where we're at now. That's where we're at now with all this COVID and toda esta madre. Pero I get what you're saying. Kind of like es como cuando alguien hace una cover song. Like if somebody covers Led Zeppelin, for example, if they're gonna try and sing it the same way, why do you want to listen to it? I'd rather just listen to Robert Plant sing it the way he sings it. But it's good when an artist covers Led Zeppelin in its own way, right? And it gives us its own twist and. So yeah, I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah, you gotta create like your own. You know, you can't be like Led Zeppelin or the Beatles. You gotta create your own band, like the Killers, ¿verdad? And then make your own music, even though they're influenced by the other.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's allowed to be influenced. Yeah.
Lo que pasa es que then what's cool is that like our community gave me a chance. You know, they actually opened their mind. And then they started to read it, and then they liked it. They embraced it. You know, there's always like the haters, right? The whole concept of haters.
Yeah.
They do exist, because they don't understand it. They don't get it, and it's okay. You know, it's just like how people hated hip hop and rap at first in the '80s because they thought it was like low class and eran malcriados.
Yeah.
That it's funny. I've gone through that process because it's very. There's parallels, you know, like with NWA, where like the black community was angry and the police were angry because they were talking about police brutality and they were using bad words como motherfucker, bitch, you know, all that.
Fuck the police, all that
shit. Yeah, all that shit. Como hablábamos, pues. And then that's what I did. I took our ghetto lingo and I put it into literature. So I put how we talked in El Salvador y en Sur Centro. And then young people see themselves. They're like, damn, that's how I talk. That's how we act. Y con la ciguanaba, the new generation is starting to get it, to wake up. Because some young women, they started to tell me, because this is really new, so I'm barely starting to get feedback.
Yeah.
And some of the young Salvi girls or young women, they're like, damn, I'm la ciguanaba. They're identifying themselves, which is really cool because there aren't much books or literature that talk about us, you know, that we can identify with. And then some people told me, hey, man, why don't you go white? Así me han dicho. Yo tengo un amigo de Guatemala.
What? Go white? What does that mean? What does it mean
to make it in Hollywood, where they make their stories fit what white people see, you know, at the movies. And it's whitewash. That's what it is, and people don't even realize it. I'm not gonna say names.
And I'm looking here at my primo. He writes stories, and he's kind of sent stuff to me to read. And it's not that he's trying to be white, but at the same time, it's like como que subjectively, you're already trying to cater for that audience, right? I imagine. I don't know, Stanley.
Yeah. And I think what's empowering is when you don't, because como con esta, ¿verdad? Me trataron de huevear mi novela. These fools, they try to steal my novel because it's
what?
Yeah, just like in music, you know, if you're not careful, just like what they do with the black artists, they do it to us too, and sometimes it's our own people too. So sometimes they think we're naive because venimos de un pueblito y que no sabemos inglés. They think they're going to trick us with contracts, right? But sometimes these fools, they don't realize that we're savvy and that we have political experience and legal experience, that we're not going to let people like take our art or our work. Porque en Salvador hubieron muchos músicos, ¿verdad?, que escribieron sus canciones y se las robaron. And it's true, in the 60s, 70s. So they never got the proper credit. And then other people made millions of dollars off of it. So it's happened. It's happened. And I think it's part of the...
So they tried to do that to you and to which book? I guess you showed a book right now.
And the thing is that I caught on to it because if somebody wants to like use your literature, they have to pay you. You know, like if a white person writes a book, como J.K. Rowling, right? She wrote Harry Potter. Then Disney or Hollywood comes knocking, they're gonna be like, "Hey, J.K. Rowling, we want to do Harry Potter into a movie." They're gonna, but from the get-go, they're gonna pay her probably $100 million, right? $100 million. I don't know how much they paid her at first, pero they're not gonna come and say, "Hey, can we use your novel? And then we're gonna make it into a movie." Y te tratan de joder como by not paying you.
Yeah.
That's sort of feeling, you know what I mean? So in a way, we have to give ourselves value. We have to tell our community, you have to invest. We have to invest in our own talent.
But at the same time, it's like it also starts with being proud, right? And being and recognizing where you come from, and which is what you're doing now, right? Kind of passing on that knowledge to younger generations. And that's what Stanley was talking about earlier, that then the younger generations, you can see them more being a lot more loud about being Salvadoreño than we have ever been, to be honest. And not that I was ever hiding it, pero yeah, I'm not out there posting it like like the younger generations do.
And I think Go ahead.
Thank you. No, but do you think that your stories, like you said, are getting the attention they're needing? And like I said earlier on the call, like we're at that point where your story, for example, there are other younger creators that are coming out, that the Salvadoreño story, that El Salvador is going to get a different image soon. Like that it's going to pop. Like, okay, there's more than just what we know. Do you think that's happening?
It's starting to, because we do have a lot of talent, and I've met some of them through like the different art festivals I've gone to, and that's how I met Sin Color, because I heard Crisia singing at USC, and I was like, God damn, that music is beautiful.
You can sing,
and yeah, and I'm like, I'm gonna go buy her CD, and then I asked the lady who was representing her, I go, hey, is she Salvi? And then she didn't know, but then I asked her directly. And then she told me yes, and I was like, "Whoa!" And then,
wow, cool.
Here's an example of talent. The only thing is that we don't get the platforms or the access to the national networks, in Spanish and English to help us. For ejemplo, Don Francisco could have invited me to talk about my book, but I never got invited to be on his show. And other communities like Mexican, Puerto Ricanos, Cubanos, Colombianos, they were always on his show. So it's because of the Miami connection, they have a lot of influence there.
Oh.
But we don't, because we don't get those platforms or exposures. We don't get access,
Hey, but we're building it. We're building it. We're putting it together here and there. Everybody who can, right? Like you're doing your part to kind of bring in those connections, and somebody behind you will be like, oh shit, right? They can reach out to you directly, even maybe
like
right?
that Venn diagram of stuff like you said earlier, right? Like there's so many communities within the Salvadoreños that are creating, be it artistically, be it politically, be it even business sound. Like we're encircling each other, and hopefully the younger, even the current. I mean, shit, Randy, no estás muerto, puta. You're still doing it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you're still.
So don't.
Right?
No te ha llevado la pelona todavía.
Bueno.
Oh, yeah. A mí también. También.
Bueno, la pelona sí. Aquí están dos pelones, un peludo. Usually it's the other way around. But,
no, pero you know what happens? Like in art, especially literature, that when you die, that's when something becomes well known or it blows up, which is really sad because that's what's happened to a lot of black writers, that uh, they had to die and then their literature became known. Like there's this lady, Thurston. So I always forget her complete name, but she wrote a book and that nobody knew about, and they got lost in the 70s. I think Angela Davis or another author, the one who wrote The Color Purple, she helped to bring it back. And then it sold millions, millions upon millions, and now they use it in all the school districts. But then that lady that wrote it, Zoe Thurston Zeal, I think, she died destitute. She died like unknown and broke. But then,
I mean, the same thing happened to Van Gogh, right? Like Van Gogh and other artists like that. But like the one thing I do like, at least recently, Stanley, I don't know if you remember, there was an instance where, who was it? A Salvadoreña. Hay una muchacha que like she has her own like right fashion, yeah, and somebody tried to. Yeah, brand. She has her own brand, and it's a very clever Salvadoreña. You know, I was like, that's pretty clever, it's dope. You know, and we started following her, and then all of a sudden, some other, I forget who it was pretty much stealing her that trademark and her design. And the cool thing is that everybody came in and was like, nope, you stole that. It's like The Simpsons already did that, like you know, like you took that from somebody, and people immediately started calling them out and supporting her.
But you know,
what
what I realized with that is like kind of you were saying that the community now. So let me see if the pieces fit here. The community, because we've always had so little represented, now that we are getting representation, even though it's still small, but we are getting it. Yeah. The community is very saferra. They're defensive of it. Like, hey, like, no, that's our shit. Like, you can't just take it. You know, you just can't run away with it. Like, Randy, your Cipitio book, if somebody out of nowhere a year from now tells me, hey, have you heard about the Cipitio book? I'm like, oh, yeah, Randy's book, and they tell me a different name, I'm immediately going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I know where it started from. I know who wrote it. I know the trajectory for it. So I think that the community is getting to that point. Like you said, we're starting to being more protective of our community's work, of our stories. Even if it is an interpretation that's different than what our grandparents know, it's still something within the Salvadoreño community.
Yeah, you know, and then I saw this Salvi poet, right? I shouldn't even be bringing him up, but I saw he did like a little review of my novel. He was like tripping. He was one of the haters, but he's like that 1% or less. and then he thinks he's slick, right? Because he was trying to use a different name, and I was able to figure out who it was.
Well, you're doing something right. If you have some haters, you're doing something right.
And I felt bad for him because I think he didn't have to go that far. You know, he could have like reached out to me, or he could have been at least nicer, because if somebody goes out of their way to write a negative review, it means that they're not happy, you know, with themselves, and I don't do that.
I mean, there is a difference between criticism, right?
Yeah, and, like let's say if I don't like a book, you know, damn, I don't take the time to go and like hate it, you know, like kind of like that takes a lot of effort, and then you're hating on your own community, and that's what we need to overcome, because we have that issue of self-hatred, because they've taught us, you know, through the Civil War to hate each other. So I think that that's really the my goal is to overcome that through my books. And I pointed out through the characters that we killed each other, we hurt each other, and we don't even realize it. You know, we do realize it, but I don't think people realize. That's why our parents don't like to talk about that war, because it created so much pain, you know, and unnecessary killings. Like even with the gang stuff, you have to like ask these gangsters, right? Why have they killed so many innocent people? For $1, for $5, like come on, shame on you, you know. But because for reals, they were killing, you know, like campesinos for $1. What kind of bullshit is that? So we have to, the new generation needs to start calling people on those things and not allow it, because we're so many that we should not allow that, in terms of like mistreating and hurting our own people.
I agree.
Because yeah, and I think that we need to start having that conversation, because we've gotten some like we gangsters too hit me up.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
they like send me messages, and they're like, "Hey, why did you say like in your novel about that we were singing Kumbaya in a circle?" And I'm like, "Damn!" I'm like, "That is humor. That's called humor."
It's a joke. We're supposed to laugh, no? Damn.
Yeah, but they were trying to like act gangster on me, and I'm like, damn, you've been watching The Godfather too much,
No, pero fíjate, mira, I want to touch on this before we kind of wind down, but if you think about it this way, for a cholo, that I'm from Salvadoreño means a lot in that community, because they're like, oh shit, they immediately remember El Salvador means MS-13, war, very violent people. That's what you in that mindset, like, and so that person may have been like, hey man, you're making the Salvadoreño tough image funny, or you're making like my street quote unquote rep not tough anymore. And I guess I understand that side of it, because there is a lot of that gets carried, like we're tough, we're violent too, because no nos dejamos, somos peleoneros, like somos malcriados, but they're like we're not malcriados, it's just the way we speak, but they emphasize that, hey, we're like this, deal with it, like it or leave it. Do you think it's an exaggeration, that they're exaggerating it, or is that really what we are?
Well, I think that there needs to be a balance between exaggeration and authenticity. And I think it's okay to exaggerate if it's like in that genre. Let's say you're writing fiction, you could write or make up anything you want. You could create a monster with 5 heads or 10 heads. So it's like up to you, and then it depends how people will like it. If people will like it or not. And then in our community, I think that I think they get it, because even the different gangsters from different gangs have read my novel and they like it. They get it. They get it. They understand what I'm trying to say, and they think it's funny. That's what's cool about it. And yeah, and they buy it. I'm not kidding. I go to a lot of art festivals, and I meet them, and then they're willing to invest in a book, and it's probably the first book that they've ever read. About Salvadoran Americans or Centroamericanos. So in a way, I'm bringing more awareness and knowledge. And I think I keep the bad words and all that in there in the novels as a way to make them authentic, because rap music wouldn't be rap without the bad words. Like If the Police wouldn't be that, or Straight Outta Compton wouldn't have been such a big hit if it would have been like softy, kind of like, oh, like. And then what's funny too is that they weren't really real gangsters, the ones that did it, except for he was he was more like a drug dealer, but the other guys were not gangsters. It's just that they were interpreting what was going on in Compton and South Central, and that's why they became such a hit, because I think people could connect. They could connect, and in the videos, they did a good job.
I mean, I will say this. Look, in college, I used to get a lot of, because en el grupito que teníamos de amigos en el colegio, era todos eran mexicanos, había un peruano y 2 salvadoreños, el resto y éramos como 14, 20, que así que nos juntamos. Pero ya, un peruano, 2 salvadoreños, un nicaragüense, el resto mexicanos, puro mexicano, pero siempre they would joke around, specifically with me, they would be like, oh, no te metas con Walter, dice ese cabrón, puro machete. And I was like, man, come on, man, it's true, I have a machete in the truck, but
it's true, but don't put me out there.
It's true, but that's fucked up, man. Like, don't generalize. But
you're
it's
like,
true though.
Me.
But it's like, it's we have to also overcome, and it's good that the newer generations are being more loud, because then we avoid that erasure that happens a lot of times.
Yeah, and we need to tell like the new generation to invest in their community, because the black community, they were good about that. They had the Green Book,
Yeah.
and it was like, damn, it was so powerful. So we need to support our music, our poets, our artists, painters, our writers, because that's one thing that hasn't existed, and that's why a lot of people haven't blown up. The only one that was able to kind of break through, but because the Cubanos helped them out, in Guatemala too, was Alvaro Torres, because he
Oh
had
yeah,
to leave El Salvador,
like
go to
Mexico.
ajá, México, y después en Los Ángeles nada, man, pucha, que nadie lo apoyaba, así que se fue a Miami y los cubanos lo apoyaron, and now he's like one of the most listened to and famous singers in Cuba, So it's like
Wow.
interesting how it works. So we have to use it. Sometimes we have to go away or from our community, and then we're trying to
Yeah,
say
and it's
no.
something that the Carica from Sin Color, she was saying that, right, she found a lot of apoyo within the Mexican community rather than Salvadoreño community, right? So, yeah, it happens. You have to get away sometimes.
But I think
Mm-hmm.
that with the platforms we have today, right? Like things have changed. You're writing your books, you're publishing your book. It's available, guys. Digital as well. So let's not forget that that's an option for you. Just a click away, you can read it digitally on Amazon. And we want to support. We will have to support because that's how we keep Randy writing. That's how we keep our story out there, and we avoid assimilation. That's the thing we've always talked about on this show. You know, the diaspora of Central America, man. It's embedded in everything going on, and we don't want to forget where we came from. This story is great. It's fun. I'm excited to read it. I'm gonna get my hands on it, and because it's an interpretation of a folklore, like you said, supernatural kind of a allowing someone to laugh, allowing someone to kind of get interested, because like un ejemplo, una historia que cuente el
And
papá de Walter.
offended too, right?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, nobody's not. You
Yeah.
can't please everybody. I've learned that, right?
Yep.
Whatever you create, you can't please everybody. Okay? And a lot of artists that we have on this show have always told us that, hey man, do it as long as you like it. You're writing it because of you. You're not shooting for a specific audience. You're shooting it for you. Once you make it for you, you're happy. And if that audience likes it, great. And if the other ones don't, well, too bad. They don't like it. Randy, one thing we always ask our guests is, what's one thing you can tell an up and coming creator and author that would be a good piece of advice for them? I speak for myself, anybody else listening too. What's one bit of advice you can give somebody starting out or wanting to take that next step in creating something, especially in writing?
It's really like that Nike model, right? Which is like a cliche, like about just do it. But it's so simple that it's really, you have to get to that point about just doing it, and it's not easy. Sometimes it takes decades to actually believe you can do it, and not just that. Sometimes it takes decades to write something. Like my friend, it took him 40 years to write one book because he
Wow.
has dyslexia. 40 years, and then I tell students it took me 20 years to write one.
Wow.
It's like 20 years. And it's sort of like the history of the Latino community, right, in the U.S. In the last 20, 30 years. So yeah, that's why it took me like 20 years. but it takes that kind of effort, and you can't. Sometimes you want to give up, and it's true, man. Like sometimes when I've gone to some festivals that people haven't been supportive because whatever reasons, that day wasn't like, it was a bad luck day,
Yeah.
but they were rare too. But it happens. But then I had like some amazing days too. Like I had like some amazing experiences that that would lift me up. Like sometimes I would be there, and I would be like so like disappointed and sad, right? Because our community wasn't like supporting. But then all of a sudden, like a mom or a grandma will show up with the kids, and then the kids were like, "Oh yeah, we want the El Cipitillo, the Adventures of El Cipitillo, like El Ilustrado," and then they will get a book or two or three, and then I would be like, "Damn, okay, that's what made it worthwhile," standing here in
Gotcha.
the sun, because it took a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to go out there and be in front of our community, all of our community, Mexican, Salvadoreño, Guatemaltecos, Hondureños.
No, I mean, we want to support you, man. You know, I thank you for that, and let's support you. You gotta eat, you gotta drink, but you also need motivation to keep moving along. I want to hear the next story. You know, I'm gonna pick up your books. You know, and I'm gonna definitely share. You know, we want to put this on our podcast, social media, and we want you guys to just support our primo Randy. You know, like we talked about, this show is called My Primos Podcast because we're all primos, even you're from not a Salvadoreño, but we're all related. We're all wanting to find a space for each other and support each other. You know, especially la comunidad salvadoreña out there that keeps complaining that there is no representation. Here's somebody doing it. So let's really put. But when there is,
they're very critical.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. You can critique, but don't complain that nobody's doing
critique
it.
Critique is good.
Yeah, critique is good. Don't bash somebody. If you're complaining que no hay nadie haciéndolo, here's an example of somebody doing it. So, you know, we really want you guys to support, you know, our Primo Randy Jurado Ertll. That's Ertll. You guys can search his name on Amazon. You see all his books there if you want to order them to your home, as well as, you know, check out, he does have his website, randyjuradoertl.com. Randy, thanks so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope that we can have you back, man, have more conversations like this, and just really just dig more into Salvadoreños and avoiding assimilation.
Yes, y muchas gracias a mis primos podcast, pues, and then the two of you for inviting me, and I really enjoyed it because we need more like authentic, straight up conversations, you know, because I think that's going to liberate us and empower us, and I think that slowly, you know, we're gonna blow up.
That bubble's gonna burst, man. We're gonna make it.
Yeah, and not necessarily for the sake of blowing up, but for the simple fact of just getting recognition for who you are, what you do, what you've been doing, what you want to do in the future. It affects all of that, you know. So I like that. I like this conversation. It was very insightful.
Primos, again, check us out on all social media at My Primos Podcast. We'll have links for Randy's work. And as always, Primos, we thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.
Nos vamos para nuestro lindo país.
Tengo vacaciones, voy para mi tierra a gozar la fiesta, que son tradiciones. Comenzó la fiesta, todos a bailar. La reina del pueblo van a coronar. Llevo mi carrito o me voy volando. Muchos recuerditos llego regalando. Voy para las playas